What's up, everyone, and welcome to another Rust Pro Series video. I'm Gneissish, and this is Volume 2 of my two-part series on standby power. In the first video, we focused on how to apply this to a cave base with a single entrance, so single twig entrance. If you break that one, that one twig, it sets off the system. Since I've already wired this up before and explained how all this works, I'm not going to do it again. I've pre-wired it this time. If you want to know more about this, watch the first video. I'll link this on the screen here. And just note that the examples are the same, 5 turrets on each example on the single and dual battery versions. The only difference from the first video is that I have this power bank now. The power bank is not wired into any of this. It's over here, and I'll show you what that is in the end. So everything's exactly the same. And so in the first video, the point was that you had, some twig that you set up in, in the case of that video, it was a cave base or, wherever. So you had a single twig. And so let me go ahead and just, I'm going to hook up this battery to the system, just like the first. So this is already charged. And there you go. And so, of course, predictably, the turrets have turned on, and this battery has a runtime of 7 hours and 24 minutes at 54 active usage. And so what the whole point was is that if you run a switch on a twig wall somewhere that cannot be passed without breaking it, whether it be through shotgun traps and stuff like that, or if it's through, the raider just being forced to break it just based on where it is, whatever. The idea behind this system is you have some twig wall that has a branch switch or something similar on it, and then that switch is run to the block pass-through on this blocker, and there you go. The system is because the way blockers work, this battery now has an active usage of 0, so it just retains its charge and is sitting there waiting for the moment that this twig is broken. And this battery here has an active usage of 2, so that would actually be like 8 days. That it would 8 real-world days of it just with a single branch. And so that was how we did in the first one. You break this, it releases all that, and they turn on for whatever, 7 hours and change. So someone asked, well, what happens if I have two, cave with 2 entrances? And that's a really great point. And so the easiest way to do this is to simply daisy chain off of the power out, just to make sure you have enough juice going over there. Off of the power out, you run that to the branch, a second branch. You just daisy chain them together. Take either one of the outputs of that second one. So it's always the last one in line is the one you're going to want to run to the blocker. And there you go. So now I've got 2 branch switches in line with each other in series, and they're blocking the system. So this has an active usage of 0. This one has an active usage of 4, which is 4.1 days of standby power with no power source. I have a power source on this because of this tutorial. You wouldn't, presumably, if there's a cave base anyway. And so it has an active usage of 4, which is 4.1 days of standby time that it'll keep these alive, blocking this and this battery from draining. And so the idea being that now it doesn't matter which one I break, because if I break this one, this is the one hooked up to them. If I break this one's powering that one. So either one, if I break one, it's going to release that system, and now this thing is running at 7 hours and 24 minutes of time with 54 active usage, and there you go. That's literally it. And so from the first video to this one, all we're doing is adding an extra twig, to keep that blocked. And so another point to make would be, let's say you had 3 points. The idea is exactly the same. It doesn't, I'll just do it this way. If you had 3 points, the idea is exactly the same. You would just run from your standby power, you'd run that out to the first one in the series. It doesn't matter which one. Oops, I forgot to put one on there. So you'd run that to the first one, and just daisy chain all of the twigs switches together, and that's all you have to do. So if I run this to this one, run a power out, run that into this one. I try to run it where you can't see through the holes, if you care about that. And then the last one, again, power out again to this one. Then either of these can run to this blocker, and then once again, here we are at 0 active usage. It's on standby, but we have 6 active usage now, right? So that means less time. That's around, I think over there is about 2.7 days now. So the more times you do this, the less time your standby battery, especially if you're in a cave, has before you have to replace that battery with a fresh one to keep the system on standby. And so that's it. So now if I break, it doesn't matter. If I break the middle one, someone came in that way, it's still going to release it, and we're good to go. That's it. So let's go ahead and just unhook this one, and we're going to move on to the dual battery one now. So now for the dual battery, again, exactly the same as before. except for the couple of differences I'm going to show you. And so we're going to just do the same exact thing. We'll hook up a couple of these. We'll put a couple of branch switches on there. It actually doesn't matter what kind of switch you use. The branch is something early game people get a lot. So we have two batteries. We have the green battery and the blue battery. So I'm going to run this green line. It's the primary battery into here. Of course, these are going to turn on because I'm powering it. I'm going to run the blue battery or secondary battery off of here. I'm just going to run that over to this other input here. Again, watch the video if you want to see this build. There we go. So now we got our two batteries in line. The first battery is, of course, blocking the second battery. So if not blocked by the standby battery, this one has, what, 7 hours and 46 minutes and change. And then this one's at 0 until this one is, let's pretend this ran out of juice. Now it's going to switch over to the second one for another seven or so hours. And this one's, would be pretend it's dead. So, very, very simple idea. And then the actual application of this is exactly the same as before. You just have your standby battery. You run that standby battery to the first, any of them, doesn't matter, just one of your twig switches, we can call them, and then run the second twig switch off the first twig switch. There we go. And then on this one, you need both of these outputs because you have multiple block points here. So you just take either one of them and you run that over to the blocker right here. So this is the blocker for the green side, the primary battery. And then the power out of this is going to run to the other block input, which in this case is the other XOR input, or I'm sorry, excuse me, OR switch input, which is right here, like this. And now we're fully blocked. So now with this system, we've got both of our batteries at active usage 0, and our standby battery has an active usage of 6 because, this one requires more than this other one because it's a dual battery. So with 2 twigs, I have 6 active usage, whereas this first one, if you'll recall, with 3 twigs, I had 0 active usage. So there's a correlation between how many backup, how many standby batteries you're going to run and how much active usage this thing is going to take. And so with this one at 6, it's 2.7 days before you have to swap this out if it's not powered. And the way it works is identical. So it doesn't matter which one I break because they're in line with each other. If I break one, it's going to release them. And then the green battery here, the primary, is going to keep the blue battery out of the circuit until it dies. So we'll have 7 hours and some on this, plus 7 hours and some on that, so 14 plus hours of standby power. And so that's great. And you can keep doing these twigs. You'll just have less and less time on your standby battery, assuming it does not have any charge to it. So the last thing I'm going to talk about before I do a demonstration here on the example base is that I wanted to talk about how, let's just hook up. I'll hook up one here. We'll do 2. I'll hook up 2 just like before, exact same thing. I'm going to have these 2. I'll run the power out. Whoops, that's not the power out. I'll run the power out of one into the power into the other, like so. And then we'll go ahead and just run this over the same way we did before, like so, to either one of the blockers. So I'll just start with this first blocker, like this. Same thing. We'll get the other one, whatever one you didn't hook up. We're going to hook that one up to the OR switch over here. If I can just get over there. There we go. There we go. OR switch. And so we've got these 2 things hooked up. And if I hook up the output of the battery, I can run that to the input of the first of my series. And there you go. We're back blocked again. These have 0, 0, and this thing has 6. So here's the other thing to keep in mind. So if we're talking cave bases, you're going to be making these, maybe without a power source, because that's kind of the point, is that maybe you want to hide. I don't want a power source on the surface of advertising that I'm down there. So you have these standby batteries that you charge somewhere else. I do it on the surface in secret little trickle charge bases that look rated. That's the way I do it. And then every so often, in this case, 2.7 days, I swap this out with a fresh one. In this case, it'd be 4 some days. I swap this out with a fresh one. And I just do that for as long as I want to on the wipe to keep this standby power that I don't have to continuously charge, right? And so that's great if you're in a cave base. That's a great option way to do this. But another thing you can do is you can have, so I have this power bank set up here, and the output, and it's just a wind turbine and 4 solar panels into a power bank. You can see my video on that if you want to learn how and why I do that. the output of this root combiner here is running straight to the input on this counter, just so we can see how much juice is coming through. And then that's running to this branch, of which the branch out I've run to the input of this standby battery. So let's pretend this isn't a cave base. You have an actual base, but you would like to have an additional defense system set up where you have, in this case, 14 hours of 5 extra turrets that are not on until one of these is broken, right? And I'll show you how I would set this up. It's the same as the first one, but I'll show you how I would do it with a base with 2 entrances here. That you can have an addition to whatever you're running. So you could have off that power bank, this could be running to an actual, a whole other battery that has 100 watts of stuff, right, going on. And then you just have the little trickle charge, and all you have to do is this. If you have an active usage, you can take that active usage, and because the rust batteries have an 80% charging efficiency rule, and so this 6 active usage that keeps this thing in standby, if you divide 6 by 0.80, you will get 7.5, and so we can't do 7.5, so we can set this to 8. With just 8 volts coming out of here, I can keep this battery full. Because I'm only using an active usage of 6. Whatever your active usage is on a battery, you divide that by 0.80, and that tells you, round up to the nearest whole number, that tells you the amount of voltage you need to keep something going. And so in this case, it's just 6, which means divided by 0.8 is 7.5, which means 8. Just if I set this to 8, that will keep this thing charged all the time. So this standby battery, you don't have to replace it every 2.7 days. If you've got a base that does have a power input, does have a power bank, you can keep your standby battery charged. And I have now what? Well, it's not 220, but let's say I had another large battery. I have another 100 volts of stuff, 100 watt battery that I can run a bunch of stuff, and then just partition off a little tiny 8 just to keep this one going, so that I don't have to deal with this unless somebody destroys that. Once somebody destroys my power input and I'm no longer charging anything in my base, then this thing starts a countdown of 2.7 days where these will remain active and ready for a raider, and then you'd have to swap this battery out or charge it. So there is an application to this beyond cave bases. So this is a way that you can have many hundreds of watts of stuff set up on your base that you don't actually have to charge, and you can keep it on standby for, in this case, 8 volts, which is so tiny. So that's the kind of stuff that you can do with this outside of cave bases. And so what I'm going to show you next is, let's go ahead and destroy this. I'm going to unhook these temporarily. So the final thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you a example of how I would do this. So I'm just going to steal, I've got 2 turrets in there. I'm going to steal these turrets off of here so I don't have to rewire anything. And I'm just going to run this in the most terrible way down here, and I'm going to hook up this turret here, and I'm going to do the same thing with this other one. I'm going to jumper this just straight across here, and I've got another turret down here in this corner, so we'll just jump this down. Whoops, lost the wire. So I'm just stealing these because I want to be able to show you these, that have them come on. So there we go. We got those 2. So I've just stolen these 2 turrets here, won't function. I've just redone them to these other turrets in here. And what I've got here is a mock base. If you're thinking cave base, this would be one entrance of the cave base for the 2 entrance caves, and then it would loop around. Here's the other entrance to the cave if you're thinking caves. This could also just be 2 entrances in a base, whatever you want. And so what I do is this. I set up these twigs on the entranceway, because what I don't want to do personally is I don't like to have to, when I leave, log off, do this, and have to switch on the other side. And yeah, it forces people to break it when they raid the base. That's great. But what I like to be able to do is just enter in and out of my base without any thought, and I don't have to set something up to log off, just shut all my doors, that's it. And so what I do is this. And so what these are, they're just little pill boxes that I've set up, and this would be the interior of your base somewhere. I set these up in the entrance with shotgun traps, because shotgun traps or flame turrets work as well. They will target through twig and fire on non-authorized players through twigs. What you can do is you can simply set up your 2. I've got 2 over here. Let's go to this other side. Put your branch switches for your blockers on the back sides of these where, players can't see them. And then you hook up as normal. So what I would do from here is I would just run, this would run to the first one. I'm just going to do my best here to run this, not terribly, terribly badly, but it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to run this over to here, like so. There we go. And then since this is the first one in my base, I'm going to take the power out of this one. And we'll just jump her right up here. Go across here like this, just to make it easy. This is gonna run now to the power in on the other branch or whatever switch you're using. Now in this case, because I have the dual, you have to use a branch on the terminal end because I need these two outputs here. So then I'm going to, from there, run these back across. In fact, we'll just do this in a different color so it's a little more easy to follow here. These are gonna run back across here, and we're gonna jumper these down, and these are gonna run to the blockers on our to the one blocker and the one OR switch. So we'll just run this to the first one here like this, and then you would run the second one to the OR switch like so. So I'll just jumper these up like this, and then this one's gonna run to the OR switch. Of course, you would do all this internally somewhere and not where they would see this. And this would run over to here like that. And then that's it. And so what we do now is if I hook this back up, just so we're not running all the time. This is the blue side, secondary battery, green primary. There we go. So now we're set up again. This is an active usage of 0, active usage of 0. These are on standby. And this battery now, in this example, this is not a cave. This is a regular base. And I have 8 volts coming out of here because 6 divided by 0.8 is 7.5. That'll keep this thing pegged out at 2.7 days. It'll never die until it loses its power, which is an excellent way to do this. So now if I close these doors like so, I'll deauthorize myself from the TC. So now if I'm a raider, it doesn't matter which way I enter. Let's say I blow this door open. When I enter, those shotgun traps are gonna go off and it's gonna break it. There we go, they went off, they broke it. So not only did I probably die, the system has turned on. So you'll notice that turret on the inside there is on. This turret on the inside is on. If I had gone in this way, it would have done the same thing over here, and it would have activated the system on that side as well. And so in this way, it's entirely passive, where an authorized player can run back and forth no problem because they won't get shot by their own shotgun traps. And so it only takes a raider to pass by one of these panels to activate this system, which can remain on standby power that doesn't require battery swapping if you have an alternate battery source. So this is like a really cool way to have a base that has, say, maybe you have 2 large batteries and you've got 200 watts of stuff hooked up to it, and whatever, and then you could have another 5, 10, you can do this 2 times, whatever you want, turrets that are just sitting on standby that don't require anything beyond, in this case, 8 volts to keep that battery from dying. That's 8 volts swapped out for what? 14 plus hours of 5 turrets. That's a great trade. So that's about all I've got, folks. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments. Otherwise, you can get me in my Discord. See you later.